Good morning. I hereby call this meeting to order and ask everyone to take their seats, please. Also, my pleasure to introduce two special guests, Bobby Stem with the AGC and Mike Patterson, former Transportation Secretary. Welcome, gentlemen. The Commission Secretary will call the roll, please.
Mr. Coburn.
Coburn here.
Mr. Grimsley.
Grimsley here.
Mr. Shannon.
Here.
Mr. Freimiller. Mr. McCowan. Mr. Dyson.
Dyson here.
Mr. Alexander.
Alexander here.
Mr. LaForge.
LaForge here.
Mr. Peterson.
Peterson, here. Then we need to approve the minutes. Item 26 is approval of the minutes from the Transportation Commission meeting on February 7th, 2022. Do I have a motion for approval of item 26?
So moved. Second.
Second by,
Shannon.
and the motion first? Oh, excuse me, okay.
Mr. Coburn.
Yes.
Mr. Grimsley.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Dyson.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Abstain.
Mr. LaForge.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes. The consent docket contains items 27, 28, and 29. This item was discussed in detail earlier in our subcommittee meetings. If any commissioner would like to pull an individual item out for discussion, he may do so at this time.
Mr. Chairman, we need to pull item number 28, and we'll move that to the April meeting for further information.
Very good. Do I hear a motion to approve items 27 and 29?
Motion, Alexander.
Do I have a second?
Second, Coburn.
Coburn. The secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Coburn.
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley.
Grimsley, yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Dyson.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mr. LaForge.
Yes.
Item 30 is approval of Historic Route 66 as United States Bicycle Route 66. Mr. Schwinnison, you are recognized to present.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jared Schwinnison, Multimodal Division. The U.S. Bicycle Route System is a developing national network of bicycle routes connecting urban and rural communities via assigned routes and trails. Created with public input, the U.S. Bike Routes direct bicyclists to preferred routes through a city and county or state, creating opportunities for people everywhere to bicycle for travel, transportation, or recreation. The Oklahoma Department of Transportation, in conjunction with Representative Carol Bush and John Talley, began the process of designation for Historic Route 66 as the U.S. Bike Route in spring of 2021. ODOT worked with local agencies, bicycle activists, Route 66 activists, and the Lieutenant Governor's Office to select routes that both honor the historic route while also planning for comfortable and scenic bicycle routes. ODOT received over 20 letters of support or resolutions from cities, counties, and towns along the selected route. ODOT commitment to this route and the representatives that led this charge for the designation include funding for signage along more than 400 miles of the route. The route selected by the committee connects to the already designated portions of US BR 66 in Kansas and Missouri. Pending approval from selected route, ODOT will be taking this route forward to the Ashto Spring Committee meeting in May for formal nomination designation in addition to the U.S. Bicycle Route System. Recommended for approval.
You've heard the presentation. Do I have a motion for approval of item 30?
So moved, Grimsley. Second.
And a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Sherry, please call the roll.
Mr. Coburn.
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley.
Grimsley, yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Dyson.
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge.
LaForge, yes.
Thank you.
The item passes. Item 31 is engineering contracts. Mr. Tiegler, you are recognized to present.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Mr. Secretary. Item 31 are my engineering contracts this month. I have 8 of those. Part A is Cherokee County and District 1. Department has selected Cowan Group Engineering to provide engineering and construction plans for State Highway 100. Total not to exceed amount is $1,122,970. This project is in the 8-year construction work plan with a scheduled let date in 2027. Part B is McIntosh County and District 1. Department has selected C.H. Guernsey and Company to prepare construction plans for I-40 US 69 interchange ramps. Total not to exceed amount is $434,935. This project is also in the 8-year construction work plan, let date in 2024. Part C is Muskogee County and District 1. Department has selected Meshach and Associates to prepare construction plans for State Highway 72. Total not to exceed amount is $143,660. This project is also included in the 8-year construction work plan in 2027. Part D in Okmulgee County and District 1. The department has selected CEC Corporation to prepare construction plans for US 75. Total not to exceed amount is $820,335. Project is in the 8-year construction work plan, let date of 2027. Part E in Garvin County and District 3. Department has selected Olson to prepare construction plans for I-35. Total not to exceed amount is $847,130. Project is in the 8-year construction work plan, scheduled let date in 2027. Part F in Johnston County, District 3. Department has selected Tetra Tech to prepare construction plans for the State Highway 7, State Highway 1 project. This is a total not to exceed amount. It's $836,974, and this project is in the 8-year construction work plan with a scheduled let date in 2027. Part G in McLean County in District 3. Department has selected Poe and Associates to prepare construction plans for State Highway 76. Total not to exceed amount is $1,865,795. This project is also in the 8-year construction work plan with scheduled let date in 2028. And finally, Part H, Craig County and District 8. Department has selected Olson to prepare construction plans for US 69. Total not to exceed amount is $366,340. This project is also in the 8-year construction work plan with a scheduled let date in 2024. Approval is recommended, and I'll try to answer any questions if you gentlemen have any this morning.
Thank you. You've heard the presentation. Do I have a motion for approval of item 31?
So moved, Grimsley.
Do I have a second?
Second, Alexander.
Alexander, any discussion? All right, the secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Coburn?
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley?
Grimsley, yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Dyson?
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge?
Forge, yes.
Item 32 is change orders with a cumulative total of $75,000 or less. Mr. Leonard, you are recognized to present.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Present item number 32, parts A through Z. These are change orders on projects which have a cumulative total of change orders of $75,000 or less. This item is presented for your information only, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
These change orders were discussed in detail in our previous committee meetings. If there are no questions, Mr. Leonard, you are recognized to present item 33, change orders with a cumulative total greater than $75,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, item number 33, parts A through Z. These are change orders on projects which have a cumulative total of change orders greater than $75,000. Your approval is recommended, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Once again, you've heard the presentation. Do I have a motion for approval of item 33?
Move for approval, LaForge.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Coburn?
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley?
Grimsley, yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Dyson?
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge?
Yes.
Item 34 is declaration of emergency bridge repair projects. Mr. Davis, you are recognized to present.
Morning, Mr. Peterson, members of the commission. Have a couple of items this morning, 34A and 34B. Those are information-only items, require no action on your part, but I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have. Had a couple of bridge hits last month out on the system. The first one's going to be on Hereford Road over I-35 down in Carter County. On February 10th, 2022, the bridge structure was struck by an overheight vehicle traveling underneath, causing catastrophic damage to the outside beam throughout span 2. The overheight load also caused damage to an interior beam and other structural elements. The bridge is left with no load capacity and to carry the traffic above. It is imperative that the traffic on this bridge be restored as soon as possible. For safety reasons, this will require the damaged portions of the structure to be flame straightened and other portions to be repaired with new materials before traffic is restored. So in accordance with Title 61 of the Oklahoma statutes and Section 730 of the Oklahoma Administrative Code, Secretary of Gas did declare an emergency and has authorized the department to enter into a contract for the amount of $233,325 to make the repairs to this bridge. The second, 34B, this is on a pedestrian bridge on I-240 here in Oklahoma City in District 4. This one was hit on Thursday, February 17th, 2022. Field District 4 notified the Bridge Division that an overheight vehicle traveling eastbound on I-240 struck beams 1 and 2 on span 2. The point of impact is on the westmost beam, approximately 20 feet from Pier 2. The bridge is posted at 17 foot 3 inches. Beam 1 sustained significant damage. Beam 2 was forced out of alignment, and the bridge deck was also damaged. The bridge is unsafe for pedestrian use and is closed until repairs can be completed. There are no restrictions on I-240 traffic at this time. And also, under Title 61 of the Oklahoma statutes and Commission Rule 730, Secretary Gatz also declared an emergency and authorized the department to enter into a contract for repairs on this bridge in the amount of $250,000. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are the responsible parties known?
It is on the one on I-35 in Carter County. The one on I-240, we did not catch the responsible party.
I have a question. Was, on the one that you did catch, is it a raised bed or just an overheight? What were the details on that one?
And I'll turn around and look at Jay on this one. A vehicle had gotten on with an overheight load. I'm not exactly sure what it was, right there at exit 40 down in Carter County, just about a mile south, and hit the bridge as soon as he got on there.
Which was 17 feet tall?
No, the one on I-35, I believe, is posted at 16 foot 1.
16.
Yeah, the one on I-240 was 17 and a half foot almost and got hit.
It's hard to do.
Yes, it is.
All right, if there are no other questions, we can proceed to item 35. Item 35 is proposed bid openings. Mr. Hackney, you are recognized to present.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Item 35, proposed bid openings, consists of the final May 2022, the tentative June 2022, tentative July 2022 bid openings. The department recommends approval.
These were also previously discussed in our subcommittee meeting. You've heard the presentation. Do I have a motion for approval of item 35?
Motion, Dyson.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Coburn?
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley?
Grimsley, yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Dyson?
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge?
LaForge, yes.
Thank you. Item 36 is fiscal year 2022 budget revisions. Ms. Helmus, you are recognized to present.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Agenda item 36 is for budget revisions for the FY22 budget, and it has 3 parts. Part A is an increase to the highway construction program using federal funds in the amount of $53 million for the bridge program. Part B is for the highway maintenance program utilizing state carryover funds, funding and equipment purchase, asset preservation, and field building maintenance. Part C is for the Way Station Revolving Fund program, and it is in the amount of $1.6 million, and it will fund professional IT services and operating expenses. The department requests and recommends approval of this item.
You've heard the presentation. Do I have a motion for approval of item 36?
Motion, Dyson.
And do I have a second?
Alexander.
Thank you. Secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Coburn?
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley?
Grimsley, yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Dyson?
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge?
LaForge, yes.
Thank you. Item 37 is authority to enter into agreements for Tifia 2-lane.
Okay.
Ms. Hilmes, you are recognized to present.
Okay, agenda item 37 is for, again, the authority to enter into agreements for the Tifia 2-lane with deficient shoulders. This request for authorization is to support the Tifia loan agreement to be entered into by the Oklahoma Capital Improvement Authority and the U.S. Department of Transportation. pursuant to Title 73 Oklahoma Statutes 2021, Section 350.1, and the resolution adopted by the OCI Board on September 8, 2021. The Oklahoma Department of Transportation, through the Director of ODOT, requests authorization to negotiate the terms and conditions of and to execute and deliver the lease agreement for use and possession between OCIA and ODOT. As contemplated by the resolution, a direct agreement between ODOT, OCIA, and the U.S. DOT to provide certain assurances and agreements with respect to the lease agreement and the transactions contemplated thereby, and such other documents, agreements, and certifications as may be necessary or required in connection with any of the foregoing financing agreements. The department requests and recommends approval of this item.
You've heard the presentation. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Coburn.
Somebody? Any discussion? All right, Secretary will call the roll, please.
Mr. Coburn?
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley?
Grimsley, yes.
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Dyson?
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge?
LaForge, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 38 is awards. Mr. Dels, you are recognized to present, please.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. Item 38 are recommendations from our bid openings. It'd be in two parts. Part A is a deferral from the January 20th bid opening. The following item, referred to by call order, was deferred from the January 20th bid opening. It is now recommended that that item be awarded, and that was call order 273. Part B are recommendations from the February 17th bid opening. It is recommended that the following items from the February 17th bid opening, referred to by call order, be awarded. It's call order 400 with the add alternate, call order 405, 410, 420, 425, 430, 435, 440 to the second low bidder, 450, 455, 460, 465, 470, 473, 480, 485, 490, 495, 500, 505, 510, 515, and 520. This concludes our recommendations for award, and your approval is requested.
Two questions.
Yes, sir.
Can you remind me, or perhaps the commission, of call order 273?
Yes, sir. Call order 273 was a project in the city of Midwest City. At the time the project came in, it was 13% over, and their board needed time to discuss the funding. They did meet on February 22nd and approved it, and we're bringing that recommendation to you today.
So did it require additional funding, or was the cost reduced?
Additional funding.
Okay.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. And then what is the, I believe the word was you approved the second lowest bidder, second low bidder. What-
Correct. That was call order 440. On
Yes.
that one, the low bidder at that time exceeded their bidding limit. They were the low bidder on two projects for that bid opening. Awarding them a second project would cause them to exceed their bidding limit by a pretty good percentage. And so we recommended awarding to the second low bidder.
What's a bidding limit?
We have two classifications of pre-qualified contractors, those who are conditionally pre-qualified and those who are fully pre-qualified. A conditionally pre-qualified contractor is one who has a bidding limit, rather than compared to a fully pre-qualified contractor who can bid up to their bonding capacity.
So maybe smaller ones would be limited in their bidding?
Well, just newly pre-qualified.
Newly,
Once they've done enough work with us, and enough projects and enough contract amount, they reach that fully pre-qualified status.
When was
I
that
understand.
limit put in place? It's 5 million is what you said? Or is that what I heard somebody say? Or what is that limit?
It depends on what their working capacity or working capital is. We have a formula that we use with their pre-qualification. So we get a yearly audit from them. We take that audit, determine their working capital, and it's 2.5 times that amount.
Okay, so it's contractor independent then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about 2.5 times. When was the last time we set that? That's what I'm curious about.
Oh, it goes back even before I took this position.
Pre-pandemic,
Stated.
pre-pandemic.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, all right, so that's the question I have, okay. All right,
Okay.
I'm fine.
You've heard the presentation. Do I have a motion for approval of item 38?
Move that. LaForge, move for approval.
Second, Coburn. Second, Coburn. Thank you. Secretary will call the roll, please.
Mr. Coburn?
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley?
Abstain?
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Dyson?
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge.
LaForge, yes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Item 39 is closure of portions of Douglas Boulevard and Southeast 59th Street statutory section line roads. Mr. Swift, you are recognized to present.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. On January 31st of this year, the Board of County Commissioners of Oklahoma County unanimously approved a request for written approval from the Transportation Commission to allow the Oklahoma County Commissioners authority to grant to the United States of America permission to close portions of Douglas Boulevard between Southeast 44th and Southeast 74th, as well as Southeast 59th between Douglas and Berryman. The purpose of the requested closures is for the protection, expansion, and enhancement of Tinker Air Force Base. And approval of this item is recommended.
All right, you've heard the presentation. Do I have a motion for approval of item 39?
So moved.
And second? And any discussion?
Yes, I really want to commend Oklahoma City on this, because I was involved in this years ago, and their protection, making sure that that's not encroached on, is absolutely instrumental for keeping that. So this is a major employer, and I want to commend them for this. So,
Great, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Secretary will call the roll, please.
Mr. Coburn.
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley.
Grimsley, yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Dyson.
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge.
LaForge, yes.
Thank you.
Item 40 is the Director's Report. Secretary Gatz, you are recognized to present.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Give a little bit of an update on inclement weather and some of the things that we've had going on. In February, we experienced a couple of fairly significant widespread storm events. Always commend the folks that are out there that work on the front lines every day in the field and take care of business. They did an exceptional job getting the highway system cleared up and as safe as we possibly could, as quickly as we possibly could. So kudos to them. Just when you think we're getting some 80-degree temperatures and wintertime might be coming to a conclusion, we had crews out in the Panhandle area and in District 5 over the weekend dealing with a little bit of freezing precipitation. Sounds like we may have another round of it before we get to the end of this week, and then hopefully we'll get to springtime and maybe be done with, for the most part, the frozen precipitation. Winter weather, you know, the next season is pothole season, and we'll be out taking care of the surface conditions that we're going to experience that have been exacerbated by some of the frozen precipitation that we've experienced over the winter. So we'll talk a little bit more about work zone activities here in just a minute. On the federal funding front, appreciate your consideration this morning of the budgetary increase for bridge infrastructure, the $53 million. That represents a funding category that was identified in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act specifically, that's called the Bridge Formula Program. That's a little bit of a new program. $53 million for this fiscal year, about $266 million total over the course of the 5-year authorization of the highway bill. Those dollars specifically are directed to bridges both on the highway system and off the highway system that are in poor or fair condition. The department right now is working through how we're going to administer the Bridge Formula Program dollars. There is a off-system set aside that's encompassed within that program that will direct some dollars to both the municipal bridges and to county bridges. Again, we're taking a hard look at how we're going to develop a program around that and administer it for the longer term. We've got time, and as soon as we get that in place, we will be back to you with more detail about what that looks like. But again, appreciate your consideration of that. Our current continuing resolution at the federal program level expires on March 11th. Hard to tell, you know, what the Congress is going to do with an appropriations bill for the full year, but there's some level of cautious optimism that we might get an appropriations bill through the Congress. I don't know if they can get that done by March 11th. That's a pretty tall order, but we'll continue to monitor those conditions. Our April construction contract letting we have funded right now, so that will get us through the month of April. If anything changes or anything that causes additional concern develops, we will certainly reach out and contact you and let you know. Another part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Bill that got some attention of late is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program. That program brings $66 million to Oklahoma over a 5-year period that will require us to put together a plan on how we're going to build out and use those dollars on charging stations and charging infrastructure across the state of Oklahoma. We're working closely right now with Secretary of Energy and Environment Ken Wagner, and also we'll probably pull in Department of Commerce Secretary Scott Mueller, and begin to develop a plan that reflects the needs here in Oklahoma. And our goal will be to make sure that we incentivize and work with the private sector to build this infrastructure out at retail locations that make sense from a expansion of the charging station infrastructure standpoint. So we'll go to work on that plan. I expect the deadline for the plan is in August, so between now and then, we'll be way ahead of that in our preparations, and I'll keep you updated as we progress as to what ultimately we will be doing to direct those dollars. Thank you for your consideration of the Route 66 U.S. bicycle route designation. Getting to this point, you know, with the centennial coming up and that celebration, certainly that's a big deal for the state of Oklahoma, with the most drivable miles of Route 66 left of any state. The Lieutenant Governor, as part of the Centennial Commission and the leader of the Centennial Commission, has been focused on trying to get this route designation done. Missouri and Kansas have already taken this up, along with Representative Carol Bush and certainly Representative John Talley, who have been advocates for the partnership with not only the department, but with the local governmental entities that also have some level of jurisdiction on parts of historic Route 66. The commission action today allows us to submit the route to AASHTO for consideration to add to the U.S. bike route system. Following that approval, we'll start looking at a plan on how we're going to install appropriate signage on areas out there that are safe for bicycle passage. And again, the historic route is a mixture across the state of highways that we have jurisdiction over. Where you'd see project improvements materialize might be just as part of our rural two-lane shouldering program, where we've got to focus on adding safety shoulders to those rural two-lane routes. But also, there are some city streets that have jurisdiction and some county roads that have jurisdiction, and it'll take action potentially of some of those entities to put those designations on those types of facilities. From the modernization standpoint, we continue to make progress in a lot of different areas, including cabinet-wide audit, information technology, multimodal, and strategic communications. A couple things I'd call your attention to in particular. The Chief Innovation Officer, Joni Seymour, has hired her deputy, Tara Brown, and she's going to serve in assistant capacity to Joni as she begins to stand up and further staff our Office of Innovation. The Amanda Bolden has been selected as the Director of IT, and primarily that focus is with the Turnpike Authority, but Amanda also will be assisting the department at the cabinet level with our interactions in a partnership with the Office of Management and Enterprise Services, and again, that's leveraging resources across the cabinet in that particular arena. And that does require that partnership back with OMES. So, The strategic communications, again, we can continue to make good progress there in serving all of the cabinet, and the internal audit is making good progress also. One of the things that I want to call particular attention to is we went through an exercise in February that is called calibration. And calibration is really fits in the modernization box because it begins to carry us forward into the future on how we're going to manage our personnel and our employees. This particular calibration exercise focused on our upper management, and that calibration is really about making sure that we're current on staff performance evaluations, and also that we've got the right perspective when it comes to being consistent in our rating of personnel across the board, and that we really understand what it means to meet standards and what it means to exceed standards. That was a great exercise. That positions us very well in civil service reform and some of the law changes that are now in effect as of January in how we take care of our folks going forward. Also, that dovetails very well with our recent market study and our benchmark to market that we've gone through and implemented effective as of January. We have not done a market study since 2018. As you might imagine, we had job classes that were significantly lagging behind market, and as our workforce environment has begun to be increasingly more competitive, we needed to really revisit that. The folks that work for us in the Transportation Cabinet are our number one resource. We need to make sure that we are properly compensating the people that do work for us and positioning the Transportation Cabinet to be able to not only attract new employees in the future in a highly competitive workforce market, but to retain those employees for the long term. So we're uniquely focused on that, and again, I think that positions us very well, not just in the context of modernization, but in the context of how we manage our workforce going forward. On Thursday of last week, we did a opening ceremony at Interstate 235 and Interstate 44. Governor Stitt was able to join us to cut the ribbon ceremonially because there's a lot of traffic that flows to that interchange, as you all know. More than 100,000 cars a day from the multi-directional movements that happen there. It's the first four-level interchange on the ODOT highway system, and it completes the widening of that corridor that happened. I was recounting, reflecting. When I went to work for the Department of Transportation in 1990, we were finishing up out here at 23rd Street with the Centennial Expressway. Looking forward, we've pretty much worked on that corridor between 23rd Street and Edmond for best I can tell about the last 30 years. So lots of construction activities in that corridor, whether you're talking about the replacement of the 36th Street interchange on 235, whether you're talking about the widening on 77 north to Edmond. But this interchange really is the cornerstone in that corridor. The 8-year plan includes some other major interchange work across the Oklahoma City area, including I-35 and I-240, which is another location that is well outdated in its design and needs improvement, and also at I-40 and Interstate 44. We've got to do what we can to make operational improvements within those interchanges to continue to move traffic. As I participated in the ribbon cutting, and it was, again, between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, approaching rush hour peak period traffic, I didn't see a single brake light as traffic flowed through that interchange, and I can tell you that has not been the case. I don't ever remember seeing traffic flow through that interchange like it was. So it'll take a little bit of getting used to with the different movements and that facility being fully open, but it's one that we're really, really excited about being finished with. I think we've got a 235 video maybe to show.
It's a historic day for the city of Oklahoma City, for the state of Oklahoma, and it's been one that's more than 30 years in the making. We're very excited to declare this corridor open, and we're glad to see traffic flowing through it.
Completing this interchange is a huge milestone for our transportation system, but we are just getting started in the state of Oklahoma.
Significant project for the state. I think, you know, to all of the folks with the Department of Transportation, with our private sector consulting engineers and our construction contractors that have worked in this corridor over that period, not just on this most recent project as completed by Allen Construction, but to everybody, thank you. Job well done. It's a great interchange, and it certainly exemplifies the types of investments that we're going to have to make, not just in the metropolitan areas. Whether you're talking about urban interstates or rural two-lane highways that don't have safety shoulders on them today, we've got to continue to invest in our infrastructure across this state to support our future needs. So, again, we were very proud to open that interchange up last week, and certainly most recent construction contract was awarded at $105 million. It was the largest contract at that time that we had ever awarded, and again, job well done to all involved. As we get into springtime, one of the things that always comes into the front of our minds is orange barrel season. So work zone safety, it begins in April. So I'll talk a little bit about a program called Work Zone Safe. I was able to attend their quarterly meeting, had a great first meeting, and that includes our partners with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, the Highway Safety Office, and the Association of General Contractors. And I know Bobby's in the audience, but I had a great meeting. Work Zone Safe is a education program that's looking to reach some of our younger drivers in the age groups between 15 and 19. And we're carrying that program into driving schools, into the schools themselves, and making that opportunity available for young drivers to participate. And it has scholarship opportunities embedded in it. So we're pretty excited about that. But this morning, we'd like to unveil a new PSA because seatbelt usage is one of the things that factors into highway safety really more significantly than anything else. And so we wanted to unveil this new PSA. It's a PSA that Shelley Williams, our local government engineer, had a significant role in. She experienced a significant loss, and there's a hugely powerful message embedded within this PSA. So with that, can we please cue that up?
He was 1 week away from being 17 years old. Instead of planning a birthday party, we were planning a funeral. Just a simple choice of wearing a seatbelt could have made all the difference in the world. It was that split-second decision that he made, and it's cost me and everyone who loved him dearly. I mean, you can never replace the void that he left in our hearts. I know as an engineer that we do all kinds of safety measures. We put out cable median barrier, we put safety shoulders, but there is no safety feature that we can put in place that will change the outcome if you're involved in an accident and not wearing your seatbelt.
Very appreciative of Shelley. It took a tremendous amount of courage to participate in that PSA on her part. Very, very sympathetic for her loss. But that illustrates, I think, and really puts an exclamation on the point that it's not just about you. You know, when you buckle up, it's about your family. We are going the wrong direction with our fatality rates in the state of Oklahoma. We are above 700 for 2021 and still climbing because the data is still coming in. And about 45% of those fatalities that happened were unbuckled, no seatbelt in use. Oklahoma's seatbelt usage rate is about 84%. That puts us as a lower tier state about 43rd in the country. Texas is at 94%. We can do better here in Oklahoma, and if we can get everybody to focus on snapping that seatbelt, it will make a difference in our fatality numbers. So again, I very much appreciate Shelley and her efforts to contribute to that message. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions that the commission might have.
I have a couple.
Please.
The first, I think probably some of the people saw the New York Times story a couple of weeks ago, and as you said, the numbers are still coming in. But as of the time of that story, last year was the highest percentage increase of highway fatalities since the end of World War II, which is remarkable and it's bad. And so this is something that definitely needs more attention by all of us, by all of the society. Another thing I wanted to bring up, when I joined the commission, the first trip you and I did together was for a little community called Hochatown. And for those that don't know, Hochatown is a little community of about 300 people in southeastern Oklahoma. And they bootstrapped and built a a destination for vacation, and it's remarkable. It's consistently showing up on top 10 lists in comparison with all over the country. It's literally a national destination now. Unfortunately, they started out behind, just pretty much like my entire district is, we're behind. And this is the traditional area. The roads have no shoulders, blind hills, corners, all the things that we're struggling with in the rural part of the state. So we've been working to try to get things moving along. We had a very modest first attempt, was basically to attempt some signal lights. And we put out a bid, and there were no bids. And that scares me. So one of the things I'd like to do over the next few weeks is work with ODOT. I'd like to get more data, because one of the things that concerns me is in an ideal world, we have a very healthy balance of risk between the public sector, ODOT, and our contractors. And we very much need small contractors, and we need the big ones. We need a healthy supply of all. We spend, $2 billion a year out of this agency, and it would be nice if a lot of that money stayed here, if we could support our communities and jobs and keep that within the state. But what worries me is with all of the changes with the pandemic, we may be, by sticking with old procurement rules, old procurement practices, we may be shifting far too much risk on the DBEs and the smaller contractors. And we really do need them. And so I'd like to spend some time offline getting some data, looking at this, and if it warrants, maybe have a discussion, maybe the May or June meeting. But I am concerned. It's one case. I hope it's not an indicator of something else, that we may be starting to see more disruption with our smaller contractors, because we desperately need them. And so it's something that I'd like to engage in conversation about with you on that, because it worries me.
Commissioner, a couple things. As best I can tell, you can either go to Disney World or Ho Chi Town, because they're on about an even playing field. And quite frankly, from what I hear and from what I've seen, Ho Chi Town's probably better.
Right.
You know, but it is an area that is just experiencing phenomenal activity and growth. And, you know, we are very aggressively pursuing the types of improvements that are going to be needed to support that for the future. And the project that was led, I know that we've revisited, repackaged it, and to your point, certainly welcome your ideas and input on how we might make that process better. But I'd also tell you that I think not just with the pandemic, but the bidding environment in general is changing pretty rapidly right now, and it's something that we're struggling to keep up with a little bit. But we are, and the team is working very hard to try to make sure that we get projects out there in a manner that manages that risk very carefully. But again, we can always do better, and we're always willing to have the discussion about how we can make it better. So I appreciate your offer there, and look forward to working with you on some ideas that you might have.
Thank you. That's all. Please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like the minutes to reflect that all that growth in Ho Chi Town, it didn't happen until Commissioner Grimsley was on the commission, so that's important.
Yeah.
It's my fault, yeah.
And to Commissioner Grimsley's credit, and again, him coming onto the commission really corresponded with, I think, the Department of Transportation galvanizing our focus in the area and beginning to bring some projects along, whether you're talking about 259 there in Ho Chi Town, or whether you're talking about some of the highway access routes that are coming out of Texas into that area that are carrying significantly more traffic, probably certainly 15 years ago than we expected, but only growing. So again, Commissioner Shannon, to your point, I think that there's a lot of truth to that Commissioner Grimsley has helped bring a focus, and as each of you do, and represent your districts very well. So.
Don't you think, though, that if Commissioner Grimsley weren't a Sooner fan, this thing would have been expedited a lot faster?
No comment, Commissioner.
I need to address something. Madam Secretary, did we just approve item 39 twice? Did not?
No.
Because I thought Commissioner Grimsley abstained in one vote, and then approved another time. And I saw some of my friends back here giggling as if I'd made a gaffe. So,
No.
no? All right.
He abstained in item 38, and
Ah.
he approved in item 39.
Okay. I was certain I'd embarrass myself to death. All right, do commissioners have any other questions or comments? If none, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And a second?
Second. Coburn.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Coburn?
Coburn, yes.
Mr. Grimsley?
Grimsley, yes?
Mr. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Dyson?
Dyson, yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Alexander, yes.
Mr. LaForge?
LaForge, yes.
We are adjourned.